Today on the Audio Hotline, we're going to be talking about SE's Dynacaster line. Starting on your right, we have the SE Dynacaster. In the middle, we have the DCM6. And on your left, we have the DCM3. Today, I'll be taking you through an overview of these microphones. We'll be comparing them, obviously, because we're already comparing them. You'll notice down here that I'll tell you what microphone I'm using at a certain time. But the whole point of this video is if you are thinking about purchasing one of these microphones, I'm hoping this will help you determine which one is going to work for you the best and which one's going to work for your wallet, because that might be the most important thing. Now, I can tell you that there are quite a few things that are in common with each of these microphones. The most obvious things that these have in common is that they are XLR dynamic cardioid microphones. But they're all a little bit different, all a little bit unique in their own way. Now, the SE DCM3 is kind of your no-frills edition. You plug this microphone in, you turn your gain up, and what you hear is what you get. And the DCM3 is priced at $100. And there is actually quite a few broadcast-style dynamic microphones in that $100 territory. And also in this video, I won't just have SE products. I will throw a couple other microphones in it. I'll put them up on the screen right now. I haven't determined for sure what microphones are going to be in it, but I do know for a fact I will be putting the SE V7 in this review, as well as the Røde PodMic. Everything else is a little bit more up in the air. But the DCM3 and the DCM6 are essentially the same microphone. But the DCM6 does have that mic activator, that preamp built into it. And I am curious, once the dynamite is engaged in the DCM6, if it will sound a little bit different from the DCM3. We'll test that out in a bit though. So essentially the DCM6 is a DCM3 with a mic activator built in, and because of that it goes for $50 more. It comes in around $150. Now the microphone on your right that does have a different design from the other ones. This was the first release microphone in the Dynacaster line, but essentially the Dynacaster takes the DCM6 and builds off of it even more like the DCM6 built off of the DCM3. The Dynacaster has the built-in dynamite like the DCM6. However, it does also have filters on board. And this microphone is currently going for about $289. On the back of the Dynacaster, it has 3 switches, one of which is a 2-position switch, and that's to enable the mic activator, the dynamite preamp, and the other 2 are 3-position switches, and these filters can be used to change the tone of the microphone. The options that you have is to have this microphone in neutral mode. You can put it in a low-end boost mode, a low-end dip mode, or you can put it in a presence boost mode or a more intense presence boost mode. Editor Bronson has to jump in here for just a quick second. Yes, I did refer to myself in the third person, and I immediately regretted it. I just wanted to kind of clear one thing up really quick. Since the SE Dynacaster came out, I've called it the SE Dynacaster. But much like the SE Dynacaster DCM6, there is also a little model number for it as well. So my apologies for not calling it the DCM8. In my defense, you will not find DCM8 on this microphone. And as you notice right on the box, it just says Dynacaster. But if you do read a little bit deeper and everything, it does say DCM8. So I just wanted to verify that, just let you know that if you do hear someone say DCM8, they are referring to this microphone. And I'm just used to calling it the Dynacaster, so I kind of spaced it. But now let's talk more about the Dynacaster DCM8. Now, originally when I got this microphone, the low boost mode was on, as well as the lesser presence boost. So out of the box, that's what I got. So during this first section, that's what I left it in. Currently, all of these microphones are in inactive mode, so none of them have phantom power going to them. But now I do want to activate the DCM6 dynamite preamp, as well as the preamp in the Dynacaster, before we continue talking about these microphones, just so we can get all of the tone tests out of the way. Now the dynamite is enabled on the DCM6 and the Dynacaster, and now the Dynacaster is in flat mode. Now we've already kind of went through the basics of each of these microphones and how they're different from each other. There are some specs that are different, and I'll kind of talk about that here in a minute, but I do want to let you know that each of these microphones pretty much come with the same thing. All of the Dynacaster microphones have a built-in mount, and each of these do come with a 5/8 to 3/8 inch microphone stand adapter, and all of them do in fact come with foam windscreens, and also each of these microphones comes with 2 stickers, a bigger white one and a cute little red one. All of these microphones feel fantastic. I will say that obviously the Dynacaster is the most beefy, bulky boy, but they are all built very well. Now when it comes to the foam windscreens that are included with the DCM3 and DCM6, I actually really like them. They're kind of more of that SM7b style windscreen, while the one that comes with the Dynacaster is much bigger because the Dynacaster is a much bigger microphone. But let's go ahead and talk about the specs of each of these microphones. The DCM3 DCM3 and DCM6 are pretty similar, and in fact these microphones are so similar that the documentation that comes with each of these are the same. It's labeled down here that it's actually for both of them. The SE Dynacaster DCM3 and DCM6 are dynamic microphones with cardioid polar patterns. They have a copper voice coil and a neodymium magnet. They have a frequency range of 40 Hz to 18 kHz. They have a sensitivity of -52 dBV. The DCM6 has that same sensitivity unless it's in active mode, then it becomes -22 dBV. Each of these microphones have an electrical impedance of 600 ohms, and the DCM6 has a 135 ohm electrical impedance when the Dynamite preamp is engaged. The SE Dynacaster is a dynamic cardioid microphone with an aluminum voice coil. This also has a neodymium magnet and a frequency range of 20 Hz to 19 kHz. This has a sensitivity of -54 dBV in inactive mode and -24 in active mode. This has an electrical impedance of 300 ohms and 135 ohms. Now for these microphones, I'll put the frequency response up on the screen right now so you can just check that out. Well, we've gone over quite a bit and how these microphones are similar and how they're different. Now let's go ahead and start testing these microphones out. I'll go through the usual testing that I do with each of these. Now since the SE Dynacaster does have filters on it, the testing can be a little bit hard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to test them all in neutral mode, and then I'm going to enable any of the filters that I think could maybe help that situation be better. Because going through every single filter for every single test would take a while. Take a long while. Let's start on your left with the DCM3 and get really close to this microphone, and here's the proximity effect. Now if you get really close to the DCM6, here's how the proximity effect sounds. Now if you get really close to the Dynacaster in neutral mode, here's how it sounds. Here's the proximity effect when I'm really close to it and the low dip mode is on. And this is with the second presence boost and low dip mode on. Now this next part is going to be a little bit loud. I'm going to do some plosives. First, I'm going to do it without the windscreens on and then with the windscreens on. Let's start with the DCM3. Plosive test with some pickled peanuts. 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 Now if I'm typing on some really loud MX Cherry Blues, here's how the DCM3 rejects that sound. Now if I'm typing on some really loud MX Cherry Blues, here's how the DCM6 rejects that sound. Now if I'm typing on some really loud keys, here's how the Dynacaster rejects that sound. Now I'll go ahead and test the polar pattern with some white noise for each of these microphones. Now it's time for the most important test, the kitty purr test. Right now I'm about a foot away from the DCM3. Right now I'm about a foot away from the DCM6. Right now I'm about a foot away from the Dynacaster. Right now I'm 2 feet away from the DCM3. Right now I'm 2 feet away from the DCM6. Right now I'm 2 feet away from the SE Dynacaster. Right now I am 3 feet away from the DCM3. Right now I'm 3 feet away from the DCM6. And right now I am 3 feet away from the SE Dynacaster. Now if I were to just use a high pass filter, use a compressor, maybe a limiter, just do some basic post-processing, here's how the DCM3 would sound. Now if I just use some simple post-processing, here is how the DCM6 sounds. And now if I just use some simple post-processing, here is how the Dynacaster would sound. Now we'll go ahead and do a couple guitar tests for each of these microphones. before officially starting the comparisons in this video, usually I do blind comparisons, but the SE Dynacaster creates an issue there. Since there are so many options when it comes to the different EQ you can do through the switches on this microphone, it doesn't really make sense to do a blind comparison. It would just be a really long blind comparison, mostly consisted of the SE Dynacaster's different EQ options. So right now I'm just doing a quick back and forth between the SE Dynacaster and the very classic Electro-Voice RE20. And the RE20 is one of my favorite microphones of all time. So here's how the SE Dynacaster sounds with just the bass boost enabled and the neutral top end versus the RE20. And once again, here's the RE20 versus the SE Dynacaster, but this time it has the presence boost and bass boost enabled. This is the way that it shows up when you open the box. And now we have the RE20 versus the SE Dynacaster in just completely neutral, just flat mode. And here's how these two microphones stack up against each other. The RE20 is about $450, I believe, while the SE Dynacaster is $290. So quite a big price difference. But if I do get really close to the RE20, here's how this sounds. And if I do get really close to the SE Dynacaster in flat mode, here's how this sounds. Gotta get the perfect distance here, so it's all fair. Now we have the insanely popular Shure SM7b plugged in versus the SE Dynacaster. Currently, the SE Dynacaster is in flat mode, and the SM7b does have a few EQ options, such as a presence boost as well as a low cut. However, I'm just going to be keeping this in flat mode because that's what most people use it in. When it comes to the EQ switches for the SM7b, personally, I've never been a fan of them really. I quite honestly just kind of pretend they don't exist. But now I have enabled the bass boost on the SE Dynacaster. And once again, just leaving the Shure SM7b in flat mode. Here's how that sounds. And now on the SE Dynacaster, I have enabled the presence boost as well as the bass boost. Once again, this is how it comes out of the box versus the very popular Shure SM7b. And if I do decide to get a little bit closer to the SM7b, here's how this sounds. And if I get really close to the SE Dynacaster with the bass and presence boost on, here's how it sounds. Now I have the blue Sona and the SE Dynacaster plugged in. And these two microphones are pretty similar in a few ways. Like for instance, the blue Sona also has like a presence boost as well as a bass cut. And also it is an active dynamic microphone like the SE Dynacaster can be with the Dynamite preamp enabled. However, I don't think the blue Sona can be inactive like the Dynacaster can be. But currently I have the blue Sona just in its natural mode, and I have the SE Dynacaster in its flat mode. Once again, I have the Sona just in its flat mode, but now I have the SE Dynacaster in the mode it comes in the box, which is with a presence and bass boost. And I do want to mention that the blue Sona is $350, while the Dynacaster is $290. So there is like a $60 difference there. And it is interesting though, because the Dynacaster does offer more features, but obviously with these two, sound will come into play. And speaking of sound, I just enabled the presence boost on the blue Sona. So this has the presence boost, and the SE Dynacaster has the presence boost and bass boost. Now I just have the presence boost on both of these microphones, no bass boost on the SE Dynacaster right now. And here's how each of these sound in the presence boost modes. And just for the hell of it, I enabled this second presence boost on the SE Dynacaster versus the Sona's only presence boost. And now here is the blue Sona with the bass cut enabled. Now I'm getting a little bit closer to it, no presence boost on. And I'm getting a little bit closer to the SE Dynacaster, no presence boost on, but with the bass cut on. I do want to mention that in these comparisons, I have been using the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. And in the comparison of the blue Sona and the SE Dynacaster, I did in fact notice that the Dynacaster is quite a bit louder than the blue Sona. The blue Sona is no slouch. I mean, I was only at like 45% gain, but for the SE Dynacaster with the Dynamite preamp enabled, I've maybe been at 30% the whole time. Right now, I'm currently plugged into the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, and I would say I'm about 90% turned up on the PodMic. And with the DCM6 with the activator enabled, I'm a little under 30%, so big difference. But if I were to go into inactive mode, which would essentially make it the DCM3. Now I'm about at 70% gain on the DCM6 versus 90% on the PodMic. But here's how these two sound against each other. And the DCM3, the inactive microphone, is $100 also. And that's how this microphone sounds. But the DCM6 with the Dynamite preamp, this is how that sounds versus the PodMic. Now I have the DCM6 versus the Shure MV7x. The MV7x is essentially the XLR version of the Shure MV7, which is XLR and USB. The MV7x goes for $180. It does not include a mic activator like the Dynamite preamp in the DCM6 over here. And the DCM6, like I've mentioned in this video, is only $150, so it's actually $30 cheaper. And not to mention, you still have that good broadcast style dynamic look that people love, and the reason they pretty much wanted the MV7 and MV7X. So I've just been going back and forth between the MV7X and the DCM6. I'm close to about 80% gain on the MV7X versus my not even 30% on the DCM6. And here's how these two microphones sound against each other. Now for the comparison that quite honestly I was looking the most forward to. I have the SE V7 right here and then the DCM6. I feel like you kind of know which direction you want to go if you're deciding between these microphones. If you're more of a singer, I could understand you getting the V7, but if you do plan on having a microphone on screen with you and you're just die hard about that broadcast style look, then you kind of have your answer here. However, the DCM3 is more of the competitor to the V7 than the DCM6, since the V7 is $100. So instead of putting the DCM6 in inactive mode, I just plugged in the DCM3 instead. So here's the DCM3 versus the SE V7. So depending on your use case and what sound you like more, you can kind of make a decision based off of that. I will say though, if you do like the sound of the SE V7 more, and you do plan on doing a podcast with the microphone on screen, like, this microphone looks great. You don't need a microphone that looks like this. I know there's a perception that it's professional to have a microphone that looks like an SM7b, but honestly, the sound is what should matter most. If you like the V7 more, go with that. If you like the DCM3 more, go with that. I've been trying to film this review section for the last 30-40 minutes, and Blue here, this guy right here, keeps trying to climb up my leg and get my attention. He wants me to hold him. And since Blue is honestly way cooler than me, I figured, hey, why not? Just hold him while I do the review section. But now that I've tested these microphones out a lot, I'm finally ready to give you my opinion on the Dynacaster, the DCM6, and the DCM3. And the first thing I do want to say, I think that these microphones are really solid at the price points that they come in at. Now, I hate to do this because it seems obvious, I guess, but the best microphone and the best value that you get for a microphone out of these three is no doubt the SE Dynacaster. In fact, Blue likes this microphone as much as I do, adores it, always rubbing his face on it. For the price that you pay for this microphone, the build quality that you're getting, and the fact that it's so versatile, it has the different voicings, it's just a great microphone at a great value. Now, I hate to be like, the best microphone's the most expensive one, but in this case, it is head and shoulders, in my opinion, over the DCM6 and DCM3. As it kind of should be, yes, but I will say the price difference that you're paying for the Dynacaster is absolutely worth it. I think that a lot of people could use this microphone on a bunch of different sources and get a killer sound. And that's the nice thing. People with different voices, whether they're low voices, high voices, average voices, you can get this and sound good on it. So I've already pointed out that I do really like the Dynacaster. I'm actually kind of pissed that I haven't gotten it before this. Fur is just getting everywhere. I go through a lot of little linny rollies. I do. I forgot to say it before I put the DCM6 up on the stand, but I do want to say the SE Dynacaster's plosive rejection is fantastic. The fact that you can use this gorgeous looking microphone and not need a windscreen to make it honestly not look as cool because of the grill on this thing. Ooh, so pretty. Being good at handling plosives is a win no matter what. But in this case, with how gorgeous this microphone is, and the fact that it would probably be on camera quite a bit for a lot of people if you're doing a podcast or something, big win. Now that I've talked about how much I adore the SE Dynacaster, now let's go ahead and move on to the DCM6 and the DCM3. I feel like both of these microphones are very respectable at the price point that they come in at. I know that when it comes to podcasting, a lot of people are just absolutely crazed by the SM7b. Now, in a way, the DCM6 is actually kind of the perfect alternative to the SM7b. Now, when I'm saying that, I'm not saying they sound the same. They do not. I'm saying more in the sense that if a podcaster who really wants the look of the SM7b but doesn't have the $400 budget and also doesn't have the audio interface that could really push the SM7b, you could get the DCM6 and enable that mic activator and you will have plenty of gain to play with. Now, I got to comment on the fact that that Dynamite preamp gives you a lot of extra gain. I was shocked the other day. I was plugging in a condenser microphone, testing it out for a future video, and then right after that, I went to shoot a part of this video and I plugged in the DCM6. How much louder the DCM6 was on that same setting that the traditional condenser microphone was on blew my mind. The amount of gain you need for the DCM6 is just minimal. The SE Dynacaster is similar, however, the DCM6 on the same setting is louder than the Dynacaster. Now, when it comes to the DCM3, I obviously had to push the gain quite a bit more than the DCM6 with the activator enabled. And without the activator enabled, the gain setting was identical. But I do feel like there are probably quite a few people out there with decent audio interfaces that could absolutely push the DCM3 and sound great. I don't think you absolutely need the Dynamite preamp. It'll just come down to a case-by-case basis. If you feel like you have a good interface and you don't need to spend the extra $50, good on you. Don't do it. But if you don't mind paying the little bit of extra money for the extra functionality, then the DCM6 is a solid option. Now I want to talk about the sound a little bit. Now for me, I'm not absolutely blown away by the sound of these microphones for their price point. I do still think they're good. I'm kind of just looking at it like, I'm excited that there's another option out there. I like that there are microphones out there that sound different for different people's voices that can be used for different applications. I think that's fantastic. Is the market of the broadcast style dynamic microphone becoming a little saturated? Absolutely. There are a lot of options out there, and when it comes to this style of microphone, what people care about a lot is the look. I know some people hate when I talk about the look of a microphone, but in this very video-centric, social media, online presence world that we live in, guess what? Microphone look really matters. And personally, I don't really fault a microphone too much if it looks weird, but believe it or not, there are people out there that want this SM7b look, even if the microphone didn't sound very good. I can 100% confirm this. I've seen the comments on my channel. I've seen it. Down in the thing where the people do this and they say things, sometimes weird things, like what I just mentioned. But compared to some microphones out there, I could see some people preferring the sound of this. The top end of this microphone, the treble frequencies are definitely boosted. But a lot of people like that sound. They like that articulation. I tend to like a little bit of a presence boost, but this one might be a little bit much for me. And this is obviously going to come down to the tone of your voice. If you have a really low voice that doesn't have a ton of top end like I do, you'd probably love this microphone. Because the lower frequencies of this microphone do seem pretty balanced, so it shouldn't be overly boomy for someone with a low voice. And I actually will say, on the podcast that I did with Jeremy from Obscure Mics, our podcast is called Obscure Hotline. We mix the two together, Audio Hotline, Obscure Mics. He either used the DCM6 or DCM3 in an episode, and he has a lower voice, and I thought it sounded great on him. It's obviously going to come down to personal preference here, but I actually could see this being good for quite a few people when it comes to spoken word and even vocals. And it does kind of look like a kick drum mic a little bit. I personally didn't have a kick drum to test it on, but I would be curious to see if it would sound good, especially for like more aggressive music where maybe you want a little bit more of the top end of the kick drum to punch through the mix a little bit. But you know what you need to record more than I do and how you want it to sound and if this frequency response would work for you. So the way that I rate microphones on this channel is the BB-SAR. It's a scale that goes from 0 to 10. I'll put it up on the screen right now so you can check it out. We'll kick it off with the SE Dynacaster, which I will be giving a 9. I think with the different sounds you're able to get out of this microphone, you can make it work on a lot of different sources, a lot of different voices. Fantastic microphone. Now, when it comes to the DCM6, I will be giving this a 7.5. I think this is a solid entry into the $100 market. Now, I gave these two the same grade because I feel like the price difference is fair and the performance for those price differences is comparable. The whole thing kind of makes sense to me. Like maybe if on the BB SAR we did like 0.1 or 0.2, maybe the DCM6 would get, you know, a 0.1 or 0.2 above the DCM3. But the differences here aren't worth an extra half point for the DCM6, if that makes sense. It doesn't sound like much, but it is, though. On the BB SAR, it's a half a point's big. But thank you all so much for watching this review comparison video of the Dynacaster DCM6 and DCM3. I hope it helped you out, helped you decide whether you want to get one of these or not. But most of all, I hope you had fun. Now stay tuned for the... I don't think I should say that. Now stay tuned for more comparisons, review videos, and other shit like that. I'm falling apart at the end here. But I want to give a very big thank you to everyone that subscribes. You guys are all awesome. I want to give the biggest thank you to all the members of the Audio Hotline. I should nickname every member of the Audio Hotline Nashville, because that group of people is the only 10 I see. But seriously, a very big thank you to all the members out there. And actually, for the members, if you want to go join the Audio Hotline Discord, feel absolutely free. I will just accept that request right damn quick. And also a thank you to SE for sending these 3 microphones over. I really do appreciate when awesome companies want to send awesome gear to this decent channel. But thank you all for watching. I'll see you audio nerds next time.
The audio hotline's stupid. The guy that hosts it's a bitch.
Truer words have not been spoken.